All right, everybody. Welcome to the Bar from the Best cast. I'm so stoked for today. We have not only an expert in this topic, but one of my friends who I trust a lot. And that's what we want to bring you is people we can trust that we can borrow from the best. Today, we're talking all about community. Craig Forman, welcome to the cast.
Hello, Miss
Hello.
Anna Oakes, and I'll just say the feeling is absolutely mutual, and I'm so honored to be here and just the work we do together and getting to be part of this. So thanks for having me, and
Of
glad to
course.
be here.
Of course. Just so people can get to know you in a few sentences, who are you and what do you do? What do you spend your energy on most?
Who am I and what do I do? I am absolutely inspired and intrigued by humans, how we work. I always have my whole life for probably multiple reasons we'll discuss. That drove me to eventually get my master's degree in organizational psychology. I'm in the Bay Area. I found myself working in technology, ended up with HR tech, and then ended up at an organization called Culture Amp, where I am on our people science team. So I am a people scientist here at Culture Amp. I spent a lot of time working with our clients, and currently I am leading our building of the culture first community, which is how we got to know each other. So that's my quick summary.
It is. So dive into people scientists. For those people who aren't as familiar, what does a people scientist do? How long you been rocking that role?
Yeah, so I've been at Culture Amp for almost 4 years now on our people science team. What does a people scientist do? Look, I think at the core, it's important to say that when we built our company, it's been built a little pretty unique. We had a team of teams model. So this idea that with these kind of groups of expertise that we could leverage and use in different ways, it was built on Stanley McChrystal, Team of Teams book. And we built the people science team. And the people science team is really, our CEO did not just want us to have a couple token organizational psychologists to say, look, we have IO psychologists that work on our survey tools. He wanted to really embed modern organizational psychology in everything that we do. So that was the beginning of the team. Everybody on the team has a master's or PhD in organizational psychology or some sort of behavioral science. And I think there's over 20 of us now globally, and we're used in different capacities. Many of us on the team work with our kind of client facing, so supporting our clients either with literature and information or hands on with some of our larger clients. We also have some people scientists that work on our product. We have some internally that help us roll our own tools out internally around our own culture. I started with clients. I spent a lot of time working with our with our enterprise and some of our larger clients. And then through a wild turn of events, really moved more towards marketing. So I've spent the last year and a half or 2 years or so kind of more in the marketing realm.
Okay. So you've talked a little bit about people scientists in terms of Culture Amp, which I know we want to dive into because we for sure want to talk about the community that you're building with Culture
Yeah.
First. But even before that, knowing you and knowing the work that you've done even before Culture Amp, like how long have you really been a people scientist? Like, were you born this way? Did this sort of
Uh,
evolve into this? What's this look like?
I think I was born this way. I mean, I think that my career too has been a unique career. It was definitely not a straight line. There's definitely been challenges in kind of crafting and slowly putting together the career that I think fits me best. Um, but I have a very fond memory when I was young. I was really young. I can see myself in this cul-de-sac. So I was like before like sixth grade, thinking my dad was like a small business owner, and for some reason, or my family that promoted that. So I thought, oh, I want to be in business, but I really like psychology. I want to be a business psychologist. Like I remember saying that,
Wow.
which is weird to think. Now I was young, and it clearly did not like it was a straight line. Believe me,
Yeah.
I went through school. I was in the military for 4 years. I did a lot of things that kind of got back, but I think back to that, and it was like, wow, I kind of knew it early. I mean, it took me a while. So that was a big one. Then I'd say I think the first work experience that really started to click for me was I spent some summers working at a summer camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
Compared to I worked in restaurants and odd end jobs, and it was such a great work experience. There was the community and people, and felt connected to what we were doing. And every summer I'd be really sad when it was over. And I think then to kind of help me click. I mean, it's funny to say this backwards because I didn't know then. It wasn't until I was in my 30s before I went back to school for my organizational psychology degree. But I always knew I loved people. I always wanted to find a role in the workplace. What drove people, why we do what we do. I think part of it was my curiosity. Part of it was my parents divorced. I moved around a lot. So it was a skill that I developed to fit in, to get to know my environment, what was around me, and stay safe. So between my interest in people and my what was going on in my life, I think I really just honed that ability to adapt and to get to know people, and with a deep, deep curiosity for people. Uh, which again then drove me to decide when it was time to get my master's degree, did I want to get a MBA and I saw this program, organizational psychology, and it just really called out to me, and I did it. And it was one of the best experiences educationally. and I still, I got out. I was in higher ed at the time. It wasn't like there was a big IO job waiting for me. I mean, it took some time. Um, but I just stayed focused on that. And what was I going to say? I was going to say there's one more piece to that. Um, Went back to school, got the master's degree. But it wasn't until, and this is kind of my own personal journey, that I got really clear on my purpose. And believe me, there's even a story behind this. It took me a while, but that was to get really clear, to be able to say, I'm here to help the world work better by improving the places we work.
Mhm.
And I think it was all that stuff. It was the stuff of knowing I wanted to be, a business psychologist. It was all the great work experiences, all the bad work experiences. It was deciding
Right.
to go back and get my master's degree. But when I can finally consolidate it and could just say it like that, like this is what I want to do, that's when things really kind of came into alignment, and I could move from that focus and that purpose, which did come after the degree. And then that was a real turning point for me in my career.
I completely can see that, Craig, as you're talking about the story arc that you shared. And when you hit on purpose, that really resonated with me. I don't think I got clear on my purpose. Let's see, I'm 42, close to my 40s, right? And I've been out on my own for 5 years, 19 years in-house, 5 years out on my own. And it wasn't until like year two, and it doesn't have anything to do with necessarily being out on my own. It's just that's the time of my life. So do you feel like that is one of the keys to discovering our purpose is time? Because you've got these young people saying like, I've got to discover my purpose and what's going to be my major or what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And it's like, whoa, that's just a huge ask.
I think it's important. It's funny when you're talking. I was going to come in and say, I want to be really careful because I know you and me and people in our world have like this purpose, but I don't want to send the message that something's wrong with you if you haven't figured it out. I think
No.
it's very normal. Like in some ways, when I see people in their 20s and early 30s struggling, it's like be with the struggle. Like the struggle is helping. This is what you need. I mean, looking back, I see it now.
Yeah.
Here's what I would like. I would hope that my story or us sharing this may help somebody shave a couple of years off that process, some guidance or some pointing. But like, I also want to be really careful not to send the signal that something's wrong with you if you haven't found that. I think isn't that like in our teens, it's about how do we completely separate from this, like, I have younger, my oldest is 12. Like I'm watching that, right? Their identity is connected to parents growing up. So first you got to separate, then you move into your later teens and 20s. Like you try things on, you play with, you don't know, you try things on. So like, and it's harsh, and you're supposed to get beat up a little bit. You're supposed to go through the ringer to teach you what you do love and what you don't love. And then I would hope, and it seems like if you talk to most people that have found their thing, it's usually in their late 30s ish. I know in mid 30s I had kind of the traumatic event at work that really was the beginning of the new beginning for me, and it all makes sense. And I just want to make sure that I just want people that are, if you don't know, don't beat yourself up, but that's your purpose right now. Your job is like, take that next job you're not sure about, but why are you trying? What are you trying? What skill might you get? How do you think it may help you lead? I mean, that's the important thing. Just don't your best not to flounder around. And maybe the goal is to try lots of things so you can be really clear on, nope, don't want to work at this 500-person company. I like a 100-person company.
Yeah.
Nope, marketing's not my thing. I really like, client services or whatever it may be. So I just want to be really careful. I think your job at a certain point, it seems very natural and age appropriate in your mid 20s to be solving that. Nothing's wrong with you if you haven't figured it out. But I do want to plug. I mean, I don't think I was even thinking about this into my 30s. So at least be like, that's your work. Figure that out. Because when you know that, it makes so many of the other decisions so much easier, clarity, and the level of success you experience. I mean, if you're making $150,000 a year doing something you love, or if I say here's $220,000 a year and it's going to beat you up and it's an awful culture, in life you're probably a much happier person taking the other one. So I think that find your purpose, do that, and you'll never work a day in your life.
That's right. That's right. Can I run something by you? One of the things I love about our conversations is that we are really good at debating even like the subtle nuances. So there's this concept that I talk about called like a passion patchwork. So think about it, instead of trying to find your purpose, think about the things that actually do bring you joy or passion. And it doesn't have to be one thing. Like you are not an IKEA duvet cover that it's all pure white, right? Nothing wrong with that. But you can build a passion patchwork, right? A quilt of many colors and textures. And when one of those things that you're passionate about doesn't serve you, you can swap it out. And to me, when I look back at sort of how did I get to defining my purpose, it was pursuing a lot of different passions, giving myself permission that I didn't have to do just like one sole thing, that I could have a side hustle for a while and I could have hobbies. And I could change my mind 1,000 times about my career, right? So what do you think about that from like a purpose over to maybe being multi-passionate?
Mm. Real quick, one point before we move forward from the last one, and that is, after all that, you figure it out. Here's the irony, and I feel like anybody I've spoken to, and you can tell me if it lands for you as well. You do all that work, you try different things on, you find what you know kind of want to be doing in the world. The irony is, you knew it all along. I knew it
Yeah,
when
it's
I
like
was
in
9 years
there.
old in the street when I realized I wanted to be you know. So I just think it's really funny. Maybe that's part of the clues is looking back, you know, to those things when you were a kid. And you're like, well, whatever, I don't know, you know, like when you nail it, it's probably was there when you were a young kid. You just had to kind of find it, nurture it, develop it. Now, to your other point, you know, I don't know that. I think, you know, yes, here's what came up for me. I'll give you an example. Like I love music. I loved theater. I loved performance. So as far as music went, I never really studied it. I didn't want to study it. I wanted to be left alone with it. I wanted to be mine. And I kind of learned by ear, and I've always really enjoyed kind of like improv and like just playing along with music and then eventually playing with people and like coming up with like, I like to do lead lines and that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And the reason I share that is because, you know, my family, it was like, that's great music, whatever. You need to have like a, you know, that's, you know, what's your backup plan or whatever. Just like, and it was kind of pushed down and music's not a career and whatnot. But all the years just staying with it as my passion, it's very clear to me. It might be weird to somebody, but the idea of improv, the idea of being in a very awkward situation or uncomfortable, not sure, and just having to move and go, that's a muscle. And I learned over time, the more I did it, the easier it was in music. But I can tell you, I can sense it. Like when I'm, let's say I go into a meeting, you know, in my career with like a team of executives or walking into an unknown situation, I'm using that same muscle. It's the improv muscle. It's having spent time in uncomfortable situations and just trusting my intuition. And it doesn't happen overnight. I don't think for anybody. I mean, I think if you,
Right.
even if you're in improv, you probably need to spend some time with it to get better at it. So where I'm going with that, to your point, is like follow your passions, follow these things, because if you try to second guess it, you know, just trust that what's coming out is all as it should. So the music, and look, and you know me now, you see my work, you know that I'm on stage, I perform theater. I wanted to be a rock star. Let's be real. That didn't work out, you know, but the truth is, I don't have the craving to play, you know, with people like I used to get on stage, not because I love to play, but because I'm also scratching that itch in
Mhm.
other work. I am up in front. I am on stage. I am. So that theater, that training, the stuff that I did still's with me. I never would have predicted it came out this way. So I think to your point is, yeah, like do follow that, do those things. You know, I always think Steve Jobs in his famous commencement speech, I think it was at Stanford, you know, you can only paint the dots looking backwards. And I look back, it makes all complete sense now. But there were times along the way, like, why am I doing that? How is that serving me? Am I just being distracted? And I'd say, you know, hell's to the no on many of them.
I love it because I'm hearing, as you're talking, Craig, I'm hearing look for those transferable passions, right? Well, not say transferable skills, but transferable passions, right? You liked to perform, you were comfortable on stage. How can you do that in your day job to increase your impact, right? So I always say when you have that passion patchwork, it's going to fuel both, right? Better work, better life, better work.
Yes. And look under the rocks, right? I mean, the truth was I didn't know at the time. Was it that I needed to be an actor on stage? No, what I wanted to be was up in front. I've always known that. I like it. I'm comfortable in it. You know, even when I was young, when you'd hear, you know, 90% of people fear death as much as speaking in front of public, you know, and I think that's funny. I must have an edge because I love it. I don't mind it. And um so it really, I mean, theater was really just the first way that energy was coming out. Even when I was young, maybe it wasn't about theater. It was about my desire to, and that's, look, you know, and again, now look at what I'm doing, and I have a message to share with the world, and because I have that skill, that helps me do the deeper purpose, help the world work better. I mean, those are the pieces that help me live my purpose. Maybe I'm an introvert and I'm quiet and I write. Maybe and I found my purpose and passion now is writing Medium posts. So I want to be careful. It's like, these are just the conduits of how we're here to, you know, live and do what we're supposed to do. For me, I'm extroverted. I love people. I network really well. I connect with people. I put people at ease. I host great conversations. I like to be upfront. I like to share. And you can see all of that in my work, but that's not my work. My work is to help the world work better by improving the places we work. Those are the tools in my tool belt that allow me to do what I want to do on this planet as effectively as possible.
It's beautiful, beautiful. So those transferable look under the rocks and also that self-awareness I hear you saying, right? Like be reflective. When I think when we go, 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 we actually cause ourselves more pain to have to like peel back years and years of layers of like, what happened there? What did I like? What didn't I like? Instead of paying attention along the way.
Yeah, just listening.
Yeah.
I just another thing in my life that I've played with and gotten more clear on is just this idea of like, if you listen, the universe is like providing. As a matter of fact, if I look back, it was when I was trying my hardest to make things happen that I was probably missing what needed to happen. And then if we can just drop into the pocket and get rid of the voices and you should, and you this and that, and I should be a lawyer or whatever, and just, every day kind of get up and, bring the best you can bring the world, like watch what's happening around you and trust and not shut things down and kind of it's like, I feel like it's like riding a wave. Like you just got to get in flow with it. It will
Yeah.
take you, but when you fight it, it's just so much more powerful than you are. And the energy and time wasted on trying to, like, look, I'm not going to be a rock. I think I'm a great guitar player. I'm fine. I'm in my 40. Like, okay, I didn't have that skill at 20 and whatever. Chances are looking back, I'd probably be dead if I would have, that would have worked out for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still love music. I still get to play it. It's still my life. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be my career, but I kept playing. I still have that pleasure and that joy. And sometimes I stream. You've probably seen me. I'll go on LinkedIn. I'll pick up my guitar. I do play. I just, it's not where I make my living. That's all.
Yeah. And I think that being open to things being different than we thought it would look like, right? How it looks for them or how it looks for, that person is different for us. And this is a direct tie for me as I'm listening to us talk about this, about individuals, but it's so powerful when you think about the whole, the community that you're building. So whether that's a team of 4, like my small team of my company now, or a team of 40,000, right? The individual spark, that individual awareness and ownership, I feel is extremely important to the whole.
Yeah.
So what's your tie when you think about purpose and community?
Well, no, it's a great segue because I was just thinking, I think this leads us right into, we're talking about trusting how things unfold, which you'll see where I'm going with this. Look, I showed up at Culture Amp. I'd gotten myself out of, I was in higher ed. I was in the Bay Area. This is post the first bubble burst. It was not like tech was going crazy. I found myself in higher ed. I was doing student services and coaching and just like, again, looking back, of course, you can see how that plays in.
Yeah.
I knew higher ed wasn't for me, but I saw when tech picked up, I thought, like, I'm in the Bay Area, I should be in tech. I mean, tech seems to be where it is. So I moved to an ed tech company doing client services, right? So now I'm in technology, and then I ended up getting over to an HR tech company. So now I'm in technology. I'm focused on HR. I had finished my degree at this point in time, but still doing client services. Like, it was cool, and I was finally talking. I was working with people that were in this field, and felt like I was aligned with.
Yeah.
But I was also the day-to-day data loads and making sure it wasn't broken and new features and all that, like a lot of the minutia of it, which ultimately got me, long story short, I mean, I landed at Culture Amp and I got to be on our people science team, which was awesome. It was still very client services focused. It was a little more high level. Like I was doing more strategy, and then we had customer success coaches there. But it still like felt like in the line. You could see, where everything was coming together. And where I'm going with that is, we talked about trusting the universe. This last 4 years has been some of the wildest of my career. And I never in a million years would have predicted that I'd be doing what I'm doing now when I started this 4 years ago. And this goes back to that point of once everything got aligned and just moving from purpose and like letting go and saying, let's just see where this thing takes us. Right. So I joined, I was, day to day doing the client stuff, more the client services, and then had the opportunity in 2018 to help build our first global conference. And I mean, there were a couple of things I did, but that was one of them. And it lit me up. Like, talk about entertainment, talk about theater. When I go to see a show, when I go to see a concert or a play or any sort of performance, the ones that stick out are the ones that like touch me, like from an experience perspective, where I leave inspired. And now all of a sudden I was getting to take what I loved and this interest and then put it into shape really by volunteering to build a conference. And we built a great conference, and it was a really deep, rich experience. I think I had a piece to play in that. So I went to our head of marketing afterwards and said, I love my job, but just know next year, I just want to say it explicitly, I want to do more of this. And that triggered a shift where I ended up building these events we put on around the globe. We did in our 2019 Culture First Global Conference. And through that, put me at the middle of kind of our community. And by the way, that community, and when I say that community, like just in the world of people that want to change work culture, because of the job, all of a sudden they were allowing me to be in the middle of that. So I could go to these conferences, and I was building them. And I found myself, partly because of luck, partly because of passion, partly because of hard work, in the middle of this world that I wanted to be a part of, leveraging my own skills of like a networking, and I was just not going to let it go. I was going to make sure everywhere I went, I meet as many people as possible, connected to many people as possible. And then in 2019, we said, we have this community of people that are kind of swirling around us, you know, that are inspired by the work that we do, that want to make a difference, but we want to be more intentional. We want to be more organized about it. And they asked me if I would help lead that project of how might we transform our community into something more intentional. And then we built this community team, and we, from the ground up, thought about what the Culture First community would look like, how it should be set up, and just started building. I never built community. I mean, you know, we launched 45 chapters last year. We've worked on this together. So I think it just speaks. I think it does talk to what we've just been speaking about. I never would have imagined or tracked that path. But when I finally let go and realized I'm doing the work I'm supposed to be doing, and the world's responding in a certain way, and if I just kind of every step evaluate, am I advancing my purpose of helping the world work better by improving the places we work? So if I have option A and option B, I look at each one and could say, I mean, and really, I wish I had this earlier. Like, hey, Craig, do you want to lead this team? Right. So my ego, that happened at one point, and my ego was like, yeah, like, I was like, wait a second. That's not really what I say I'm supposed to be doing. So I had a great conversation with my manager, and I said, look, I'm excited. I'm so honored, but I feel like it's pulling me away from, you know, this thing I'm supposed to be doing. But the irony is I ended up taking it. But here's how I took it. The company had a need. We are in a situation. I said, I'll do it for 6 months in the interim. Let's find the right person. And then with the team from day one, I could say, here's the situation. You stepping in to do this. We're going to find the next person. And you see the difference. My previous me would have just said yes, because the ego would have been so satisfied. And then I would have been off the path with no real clarity. And because I knew where I'm going, I made a very conscious decision. I'll sidestep for a minute, because I think in the grand picture it's better, but very clear from the beginning of how this is going to look. And this is not ultimately what I want to be doing, but I'm here to support. And it just kept leading the way. And then even building the community, I've never done this before. But I just stayed open, and I don't know what I don't know, and use beginner mind and realize that I don't have to have all the answers. And every day just waking up saying, how do we do it a little bigger, bolder? How do we go further? And again, and choosing to do the community, I felt like I could impact even more change in the world than I was working with the organizations by building this community to help other people and like expand this out globally to help support other people to drive change too. So I felt like it was just a bigger impact. And the truth is, when the next bigger impact comes along, that's where I'll go. Like, I'm just going to do as much and as big as I can in my lifetime.
You know what? You are the epitome of an impactful intrapreneur, right? Somebody who says, regardless if I work for somebody with a team of 40,000, I'm going to own my time, talents, and voice, right? I'm going to own that impact. And if you back all the way up, it was that decision for you to volunteer to say, like, yeah, I'll help with that conference this year. You saw like how good that felt, how much that aligned with your passion, and what makes you feel joy. And then you asked for more of it, right? So I think that's where we wait. We wait for permission. We wait for somebody to bring us this golden opportunity that is somehow going to align with our deepest, darkest, or like deepest, brightest wishes. It's not going to happen. We've got to look for those things ourselves. And that to me, Craig, is what makes a great community. Because listen, I look back at my time growing up in the church, and this is not a reflection on the church. This is just an example that I have found, at least in the churches that I've been involved in. There's like the top 10% do all the work, right? And what it does is it doesn't feel like those are the people who are volunteering for the food pantry, who are making the meals for this, who are, reading the scripture on a Sunday. And then everybody else just sort of shows up. And does it feel like community to those people? Maybe, but I think one of the greatest parts of a true community is that like joint ownership or joint dream or vision. So to me, that's what gets me excited about community. But when you think about community, do you have a phrase or a mindset or even tenets that you come back to that says like, look, these are the keys. These are the key ingredients to creating community?
I mean, I have lots of thoughts. I don't know that I've distilled a couple things that come to mind. One that I realize that I've seen over and over, a lesson that I've learned both in community and some other work is, build for you, build for the world. Like the more you're trying to second guess or figure out they need, like then you just become that running around looking to build something for others, ultimately probably to like, because you want to be, so getting right with yourself. And
Okay.
I think as I look back, if I would have sat around and spent all my time trying to figure out what everybody needed all the time, I had probably tested and validated before I got into this role the interest in this in the world, and because of going out and having conversations. So I intuitively kind of sensed already. It wasn't like I started from scratch. I knew there was a passion. I knew we were running these events, and everybody would say, "When's Culture Amp coming back? We love these conversations," right? So I knew the energy was swirling. So I mean, I was intuitive. I'm very intuitive, so I was picking that up. But I also ultimately, I think a lot of what I've done is built what I think the world wants, what I'd want to see, and through small experiments and tests, ultimately, that people, gravitated towards, we just kept building together. So I think one is, it's like, don't try to second guess everybody else in the world. Build what you think the world needs. Yeah, and you're going to find out pretty quickly if you're wrong. I mean, the world will tell you, but if you're willing to stick with it and you're feeling that energy, and I think we know that, where you're like, "Ooh, we're on something." I mean, I've had those conversations with you. You're like, we've talked about something like, "Yes, that's a yes, that works. Let's do this."
Hmm.
And there's times where it's like that just doesn't feel right, and so I think that's one is just build what you want to see in the world. Like, so it's a very kind of there's a self. I mean, like I think altruism. There's a selfish piece to altruism.
Hmm.
I mean, hopefully you're coming from a good place. So I want to see more connection. I want to see the world change workplace wise. And I feel like the more we have conversations and discuss these things and model these behaviors, the more we can do it. So like we started building that. I think that's one piece with community. I think the other one that I've learned in community is that I think a lot of organizations, that might be people that might be hearing this, are thinking from an organizational perspective that you really have to kind of always keep you and your organization in check. If you're building to like thinly veil some marketing thing, no real community was ever built. Like we smell it a mile away, we
Yeah.
know it. Um, so like always say, is this really community? Like cool, do marketing. Like have really great connected marketing events and say, and we're
Yeah.
also going to share for 10 minutes about our products and whatever. With Culture Amp, we are a for-profit company, and as you know, the way we built it, we don't hide that. But when we're together in our events, I mean, we talk about that connection inside, business outside. And there's been a lot of internal like push. We've had to hold the line with the company, and not in a bad way. Why wouldn't I expect a sales team to say, okay, community's going, like they're looking to do their job, are their leads over here, and us to say, no, not over here, not in this way. That's not what we've built. Like, but there are derivative values that we're all going to enjoy together. So I think just staying really pure to your why, and if you're kidding yourself about that, you're not really building a community. If it's really just if you're building a marketing machine. And I think if you're truly building community, we've built this thing completely decentralized. We have pretty loose, we've created the infrastructure and then said, build around this. If you can stay to these values, be free, build. And trying to build something that's as much for them as it is for us, for all of us, and even for the people that we bring in as far as content, which is like win-win, that we're looking for. But again, I mean, I think religion is a great place to look because at the fundamental core of religion is humans wanting to find community and connection.
Yeah.
And I think we're looking for it in new and different ways today too. I mean, I'm not saying it's replacing religion, but I think humans are looking for different ways to connect around purpose and mission and things that they want to do in the world. And we can do so much more together. I mean, at least in our community, the Culture First community, right? We talk about the driving change. If everybody's aligned that wants to see a similar sort of change, I just know collectively we can do a lot more together than any one of us is going to do alone. And the other piece is that people doing this work often feel alone in their organizations, and
Yeah.
rightfully so. Companies aren't, most companies aren't like they don't have a team of people scientists. They have one or two people to help think about their culture. Their day to day is about bringing their products to the market and selling them. So a lot of the people that are doing this work feel lonely and alone, and I think they always will in the organizations because most organizations aren't Culture Amp full of people like this. And then if you're looking at your company to like fill you up, you're probably looking in the wrong place. You need to go find your people, fill up there, so you can go back into the the war zone and get at it. You're not going to get replenished in the same place, especially if you have these kinds of roles in organizations where you're driving change. It's just designed. Systems don't want to change. It's natural that it's going to take extra energy and pressure. So where do you refill your tanks? I mean, now we're getting into kind of the Culture First community, but again, I mean, a place for people to connect but always questioning, and we do it all the time. Like, why are we doing this? Is this about us or is this about the community? And being clear that we are a for-profit company. We own all those truths, but at least we put them in front of us and look at those constantly and make sure that we're still building an intentional community that stays true to the values we set out in the beginning.
Yeah. And I want to dive in. You shared 4 things that I want to talk about around community.
Yeah.
But first, for those who don't know, how do you describe the culture first community? What is it? What is it there for?
So historically, look, Culture Amp has been building, like I said, community for a long time. We've been putting on, I think Culture Amp's unique. I'm going to say this, and a lot of companies say that, but I feel it more deeply at Culture Amp than anywhere else, is this idea of our what and our why. Our what are our tools and our software products to help organizations listen, take action, facilitate these conversations with managers to help build, really healthy cultures. But our why is a belief that the workplace can be better, and we want to impact over 100 million people in the workplace, right? So, and I feel that, and I felt that from day one through the events that we put on. And I think what happened was we started naturally, people started coming around beyond the software, saying, "Oh, we want to be part, we want to be close, connected." And I think that was that kind of original nugget of community. So that was happening. But we decided we wanted to get more organized and intentional, and have something that kind of span the globe as far as a community. So we really just came up with like in our work and research, decided to come up with 3 key things. One is any good community should be able to clearly articulate its what and its why, sort of, right? So that is, to answer your question, the culture first community. Anybody that believes a better world of work is possible and is willing to do something about it is part of our community. We think it's clear, like you either are or aren't into that, which is fine. There's lots of communities for lots of people, but we're clear, like this is not community for everybody. I think we have a purpose, and that the believing a better world of work is possible, right? That kind of ties that back to the work that we're doing broader at Culture Amp, and are willing to do something about it, which is, I think, a key piece of our community, is that we're trying to embed this idea of action. Now, there's lots of groups, lots of communities about networking, about learning. That's awesome. We do that too. But we believe this is ultimately about change. So if we don't talk about and embed this idea of action into what we do, then we're just a community of learning, which is, again, fine, but we want to change something. So we are very explicit, and even in the early days of deciding what we were going to, like, the people in our community, which we call culture first activists, was a little bit of like, should we go that route? Is it too edgy? And we just felt like, can we reclaim, why is a person that wants to take action to change something, where did that come from? Why does that have a negative connotation? And we don't have to be angry, we don't have to be aggressive, we don't have to be any of those things. So we leaned into it, we've owned it, and it's kind of fun. Every time we introduce new people and you see the first things like, oh, activist, and like, I know I've never said that about myself either, but I want to change something. So that's our community. The other piece was our principles, and just kind of an outline for what a great event looks like. And look, when I say build what you want to see, like clearly we started as soon as we started adding more people, we had to listen to those voices. It reminds me of, I read something when I still haven't done a lot of writing, but I was reading this book. I think it's called On Writing. It's like a famous book about writing. It's like from the 50s or 60s. And one of the first things he says in the beginning is, he says, don't write for anybody else. Just and it always sticks with me. Like, you're right. A writer's running around trying to figure out what the world needs to hear is just going to spin it's like, write what you have to write and see how it lands in the world. But when you start trying to figure out, you see the disjoin, right? And I think look, we had a community. So I don't want to say this doesn't sound like it wasn't a community, but when we thought about starting this off, it was like, okay, you're a community of one. How do you become a community of 2? This is what I stand for. This is what I want this community to be, and attract another person. And then collectively, clearly, because that person was attractive, we kind of could build on that. Now, has it grown and morphed, and everybody else is, I also invite people like you in and say, what do you want to build in the world? Here's your playground. Like, this community is also space for you to do the same thing starting from scratch. So I want to be careful. It's not like once we got going, it wasn't like to this day, I'm just building for me anymore. But I think the nuggets, the kernel of what happened here was saying, I think this is what would work in the world. This is what seems to be people are wanting, and we validated it through an experiment, and then we just started growing from that. And clearly the core is what I wanted to see, and then other people were attracted to that, and we built it together, but it was all built out around that. And I was right, there's lots of people that feel the same way. So I just want to be careful, though. It's not like my head's down and it doesn't matter what other people want at this point, because once you start a community, it's not about me anymore. And the final thing I'll say on that is, I think about like what success looks like. Success to me with this community is when I know, I may or may not, but when I know I could step away and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't matter. Like, it's not about me. Like, there are still days where I feel like if I took my foot off the gas, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe that's me even feeding my ego now, but when I deeply, deeply know that's when I've won, because it's truly, truly not about me.
Yeah. I just heard 4 top things that we can borrow from the best on, Craig. So the first one was set your sights on why and what. We've talked a lot about that. So if we're talking to a company right now of 4 to 4,000 who says, I want to create better community, I want more meaningful work for my employees. I want people to feel more joyful when they work here, whether COVID woke them up on that or not, is the first step really thinking about why you want to build this and what that could look like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because again, if it's really because your engagement scores are down and we got to get our engagement scores up, and we heard that ERGs or these communities do that, so let's do that to build, and let's go act like no, we saw this handbook somewhere else, we're going to take that and we're going to use it. Like what? Like just own what you're really doing.
Yeah.
If there's a deep belief that we don't see community here, and we really believe that this company to exist over the next 20 years, we need to embed a true sense of community. And then we're going to stay curious to what that might look like. And then we're going to build it and really let it go. Like not try to over control it or get our needs out of it. And you can communicate that. I think it's really important. And I think how people are going to respond to that is going to shift. And also how you engage in that. Like, are you really ready? And maybe not. Maybe the company says, look, we're not ready. We're not ready to just completely go decentralized and we're all run by community. Then own that too and say we're going to have pockets of communities. But yeah, I do think it's important to get clear, and I think that, look, this is about leadership and trust. And I think if you really boil it down, humans are amazing at sensing safety and leadership. I think that's part of the challenge, is because we have a system where you sign a contract and you engage and you say, well, I'll play this game with you, but I really don't trust you. You're not really the leader. And then you have that tension, because our human need to want to follow and lead, all of us, I think we are pack animals. And then we're there and we're feeding our kids and we're paying our bills, and we have a leader that's been put over us that we don't trust, and then we act out to try to get agency and safety, and then you create all that weird tension versus like true, when you feel that truth leadership is like, I trust you, we're going to go in a direction, and I just have this deep sense that I can follow you and I'll be safe. So I guess what we're getting to is that deeper level, and that if you're saying one thing and doing this, goes back to values on the wall, it goes back to all of it. We're so amazingly astute at watching, and those slow lacks of integrity or misalignment between our words and our actions, we're all watching, and it gets amplified as you go up, especially in hierarchical organizations. And I think it's really the crux of a lot of our issues, is that we act like one thing's going on, but the truth is there's a lot of lack of integrity and misalignment or accountability to what we say. And people ultimately don't feel safe, so they start acting out and getting in pockets and gossiping and doing these things to feel better, to feel safer, to organize, stratify ourselves. Well, I'm better than that person. That person should be fired, therefore I shouldn't be fired. Like all that really bad behavior ultimately becomes we're not feeling safe and we're trying to protect ourselves. And I think that comes from really the core fundamental thing is the alignment between values and actions. So in the community that we're building, I mean, and rightfully so. I mean, we're doing a rebrand, and we're bringing community into our website, and some of our leads push back. Good. It tells me so much, because they're not sure. They want to make sure. Right? Did we just get sucked into this, and now you're turning this into a culture amp thing? And as tricky as that is, I welcome it, because it tells me that we have a community of people that care and they're watching, and they want to make sure that this is not a bait and switch, that we built this thing to just somehow be a way to sell more software. And I respect that, and I honor that, and I think that we're doing that in our organizations every day. And you, at some level, you are building a community. People are coming together in your organization.
Sure.
So I guess what I'm saying is, are you right with your values, and why are those your values? And are they your values because you think they're great, or are they your values because this is what we'll fall on the sword over these values? And people are watching. So
Yeah.
that's I think what the core of building people and people following others is around that.
Yeah. And look, we're using this example of a for-profit company coming up with this sort of external group that they have, right? That is not directly embedded in the organization. But I think you nailed it. Like this is very correlated to how organizations either don't or should or could be providing more of a sense of community inside their organizations. Because when they call people like you and I and say, like, our culture's broken, can you come fix it? We have to go all the way back to like, there's a misalignment between your why and your what. You're saying one thing, you're acting like another. So I think those were two good pieces of advice. And then what I also heard you say earlier, Craig, is that you have to be ready, if you're building a sense of community, that it will grow and more, that it won't always look like what you started, right? Because the people that you put in it, the energy that comes in is going to create something different or
Yes.
better or slightly,
And if you
off
did a good
kilter
job
than
of
what you thought.
right? We came up with our values. We came up with because our community is running events, what a culture first event looks like.
Mhm.
If we fundamentally believe that if our chapters are, living into those values, that we can honestly look at ourselves and say we're holding those, and we are running great events, then that'll produce the output that we believe, and we get the right people, so we're clear on who this is for and who it's not. And that was kind of the hypothesis. And at this point, it's proving that that's truth. But there's so much open. We had to let go of control. In the beginning, we wanted to write big manuals and handbooks, and we hired this woman who came from Salesforce, Erica Cool. She had been 17 years at Salesforce. She built up their entire Trailblazer community from she just left. We were her first client. We brought her in to help us think about community. And I just thought we were going to be writing handbooks and manuals and like, whoa, Trailblazer. And she was always like, back it up. Less is more. Stop with all the detail. But that was that natural human desire for we're supposed to control it, right? We're supposed to put all these places. People won't like it and I think the aha there, and I see it now that I've learned so much in building this community that I take all over the place. But one is that letting go of really believing that people know what to do with the right kind of leadership and guidance. I also want to call in, I think there's a really important piece here too. And it's talked about in a lot of books. I know book Prime to Perform, which I really like, by Neil Doshi, Lindsay McGregor. Also, I think the Culture Code talks about this, but the research around motivation, that if you're doing something that you really enjoy, like truly like guitar, we've seen that. We hear people say, oh, well, it becomes my career. If I start paying you to do it, like research shows that your extrinsic motivation becomes intrinsic, or it becomes extrinsic from intrinsic.
Yeah.
And you will be less excited to do it. And the reason I'm saying that is I think one of the beautiful things I've gotten to experience with building this community is we don't pay anybody, right? Which is tricky because you have to really inspire people and connect on passion and purpose. Why would anybody want to, give and donate extra? We're also busy. But when you get into an organization, I think we just, like I talk about being straight and honest with what we're talking about. That's the challenge side of organizations. I think we have two things going on. We have this performance contract, right? Like, we're an organization. At the end of the day, we don't exist if we're not producing, and your piece in that is X, and we're going to pay you X to do Y or whatever it may be. Yet there's also this piece of I want to be developed, I want to grow, I want to and those two need to be seen very differently, and they get very muddled in organizations and make it tricky. And I think we need to be really honest with ourselves about that. So when you were saying that inside of organizations, it is trickier because you start paying people, and paying people changes things. You got to think about things differently. If I started paying all of you leads, we would not have the same community. It would shift.
Yeah, it would be different. It would be different. But as I was listening to you, Craig, I was thinking about internally, I think what we're asking for here is for people to step up and take ownership. And what I've heard you say today is that in order for them to do that, we've got to provide the ecosystem in which they can thrive, by the way. And how different is that internally, where we say, like, base level, you were hired to do this job in this little job description. But really, what we really need people to do is move out of that, right? Is to master that and then move out of that, take their blinders off, look across the aisle, look across the company, look across the department. That's what we're talking about. So they don't get paid to do that. Essentially, maybe they could, but in the end, the community that we're talking about is the ecosystem has to exist. Then the individual ownership has to match it, right? And then together they create something really impactful and meaningful.
Right. I mean, or you say, okay, here's this, you're coming to this ecosystem. This little piece is what we're paying you. You got to, but look at all this stuff that you can be a part of, involved in. And I think Culture Amp did this really well with me. Like, when I came in, it was for the first time in my career, I was able to say some things like, I see myself, I want to be a speaker and a thought leader and a facilitator. And Jen, who was the person that hired me, said, come do your day job, which, by the way, was awesome. It was like getting to work with clients and do this amazing work. Come do your day job and we'll support you in all of that. So
Totally.
what I'm going with that is, if I wasn't nailing, and I came in and figured out how to nail my job, but then they started sending me to conferences and I would bring my camera and shoot a video and started posting on LinkedIn and was raising my hand to do Culture First Global. I think that's just a great example and why one didn't corrupt the other. I felt like I was getting paid to do that job and I did it well. And then on the reciprocal side, and they held for me, and believe me, it was tricky at first. I'm like, is it okay that I'm out just saying what I want to say on LinkedIn and being this voice and kind of riding the wave of Culture Amp? And I went to Jen a couple times and said, is this cool? This feels weird. And she was like, you just do you. I'll tell you if there's an issue. So she gave me the space to fly. But I want to be really clear on anybody watching too. If I wasn't doing my day job, none of the rest would have worked. So I think that's important, at least in these environments. You do have an employment contract. Don't kid yourself about that. But do you have a contract in place in an organization that you feel is good and healthy that allows you to say you can do much more? But I never felt when I was at conferences and doing the extra work and writing the blog posts that I was being taken advantage of because it wasn't, I was getting underpaid to do, to me, it was like I was getting paid to do that piece, and the rest was like they're giving me this open space to go fly a little bit that no other organization had. And then look what I did with it. I was going to take full advantage of that and build the career that I wanted, and that ultimately worked out. But I think it's interesting to tease the two apart, right, and see both. What am I being paid for here? You have to deliver on that.
You do.
And if you really want to be a marketing person, you've taken a job as an accountant. Like, you can't be upset every day at the company because you don't like your job. Like, you got to take some personal responsibility and say, well, I'm not supposed to be an accountant. Like, they needed to fill an accountant role. I get that. Like, so I just like people like do that self-check on why am I doing what I'm doing, and how much of this is about me and how much of this is I'm just projecting onto my employer.
Yeah, it's a yes and. And I feel like I always try to give tactical advice to the company, the leader, and the employee. I feel like that was spot on for the employee, right? Like, really take advantage of your role, master that, create some space for maximum impact. What is the one thing as we wrap up here, Craig, that you would say as a people leader, what's a habit that we could put into play even tomorrow to start building better community?
We said which level of people leader? Like, I need more clarity.
I
People
think
officer or manager?
probably anybody who leads people, right? Anybody who leads people. So when I say people leader, anybody who leads people inside an organization, because I think we have influencer leaders, yes, but they have direct, right, accountability and responsibility for people, and can really influence them one way or another.
I think what comes to mind, the first thing I'd say is it's not about you. As
Mm,
much as you think it's about you, then it's just gonna be about you. Like, what community have you been part of that's just about one person? So
yeah.
if you're sitting there as a manager with a team saying, I really want to build a community on my team, then your first job is to figure out, well, what are the, what would a community, how would that benefit your team, and what would it be? Understand where your desires and wants lay in that. Like I said, build for you, but it's not about you. And if your assumption is wrong, like, be open that it's not going to work, and don't get frustrated because your assumptions were off and what you thought they wanted didn't work. I said, so I imagine if you're that person, you must sense something wanting to build that. But you got to check, like, what part is this about me fitting? I need this so I can look better for my manager, or I really believe this team is communicating, talking, and enjoying each other more. We're going to do better. Can I stay curious? And if I wasn't managing or writing the reviews, and talk to each of these people and say, what would that look like for you? And then, like, summarize that, bring it back together and say, let's roll out this plan that works for all of us. Because I think it's what I want, what this team needs and wants. And, but you gotta sort of, it's this irony, isn't it? Like I've talked about, build for you, but also take yourself out of the equation.
Yeah, yeah. But listen, it's honest to say that you have to build for you. It has to start within. If you
Yeah,
don't
but
feel
where's
that
the nugget? Where's the
motivation.
start? I mean, I imagine that manager at some levels become a manager for a certain reason, as a manager because they want to, like, lead a successful team and show they can do it.
Yeah.
But when it's time to build a community, you got to check that at the door, and it's like that's the we call it, in our world we call it the outcome factor, right? Like, we do a survey, and the first questions are about engagement, and those are hard things to, like, we measure engagement, then we measure all these subtle, like, actions under that and relate them back to engagement. What I mean is, if you're trying to change engagement, you don't think about engagement, you think about the actions that we know tie into engagement, and how do you tweak those. Engagement is the outcome factor. So in that case, the team being effective is the outcome factor. That's what you want. But if that's all you're focused on is how can I, like, streamline that or put a little pressure on this person, versus, like, well, I know that if people are communicating more, I know that if we meet, have healthier meetings, I know that the outcome factor will be affected. So I'm gonna go focus on running great meetings and have great one-on-ones and really connecting and understanding my people, with this belief that I'm testing that if I do that, the thing will change. And I think what we see in organizations is we think we want to change the thing that we want changed. So all we're doing is manipulating the outcome. It's like, well, my car doesn't go 80 miles an hour, so I'm just going to, like, put higher level gas, or I'm going to do this. But slowly you're like, but your transmission's being shot and this is being burnt down. And, like, if you're only focused on the speed, you're not thinking about all the pieces that go into making that car go that speed. So I think with the manager, I'd say, figure out what you believe deeply that you think is right for the team, but then check it at the door and come in and stay curious, and don't try to drive your outcome. Maybe you're wrong.
Yeah, spot on, Craig. Yeah, spot on. So I know one of the things and where we can find you is Culture First Global event coming up because you will be emceeing that. So I'm super stoked and
Um,
we'll include that in the show notes. But how can other people get connected to
So
you?
just if you're going to include in the show notes, just know we're super excited. Susan David is going to be speaking. Professor Ibram X.
Yep.
Kendi is going to be speaking. I love this about our company, leaning into these sorts of ideas about being strong
Yeah.
with your emotions and also how to be an anti-racist. Like that's deep, that's heavy, and we're
Yep.
looking at that in our organization. How do we continue on our journey towards pushing out racism as much as possible in our organization? Um, Please, if you really want to find me, LinkedIn's the place to go. I'm big on LinkedIn. Also, it's not going to be long, so I'm going to say it now, but it's not launched yet. But I bet by the end of May it will be. Culturecraig.com will be live. So that's going to be designed as another place to find me and a place to kind of centralize and organize more people around this idea. But for now, it's LinkedIn, and if you go to LinkedIn, you'll see culturecraig.com when it's live. Go there. But LinkedIn's the place. Really, stay connected. Please connect with me. I want to build this community and people. And if you're interested in community, reach out. We'll have a conversation.
Oh, I love it, Craig. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and all of your experience in helping us create community so we can borrow from the best. I really appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you for finding your way towards me and building with me. It's been such an amazing journey. I'm so grateful that I was introduced to you, and watching your work and what you're doing in the world. You inspire me as well, and keep me together. Like it's people like you that keep me want to go hard and fast and like do this. And it's people like you. I know we're together. We're gonna our impact can be amplified a lot. So thank you for your
Totally.
work.
Community. I love it. Thanks, Craig.